I need a 3 pin.
Would you like a pipe? So I'd like to chat for a minute or two about longitude. Now, the only reason why Britain has not been conquered more than the twice it has been in the last 2,000 years is because we're an island. That's the only reason. Julius Caesar conquered Britain in 55 BC, and William the Conqueror, the Normans, came across in 1066. That was the last time. And the only reason for that is that we are an island surrounded by the sea. And of course that necessitated eventually a very proficient navy. And with the navy for both offensive and defensive capability, and also of course a massive merchant navy for trade, that cemented Britain's place as preeminent in the world for oh so long. Now, longitude was the key, because of course latitude is very easy to work out, longitude is not. So the lines coming down, enabling navigation to be exact, enabling timing to be exact. 1703, of course the concept of longitude had been around for a very long time. The Greeks, the Romans, the Arabs, the Tartars, literally everyone had a concept of longitude, but it was never able to actually get it working, because aside from vernal equinoxes and eclipses, there was no way to do it without a chronometer. So coming up with a timepiece that could reliably keep time, and especially at sea, that was very, very important. 1703, the longitude bill was passed by Parliament in this city, and a £20,000, which believe me at the time was a king's ransom, was offered to the person or persons who could create a timepiece that was accurate, enabling all of Britain's naval and merchant naval activities to become far more efficient, far more reliable, and therefore more profitable. A man called John Harrison created the timepiece that was adopted, and that really enabled the British Empire to flourish in the 3rd century of its inception, and kept going for another 3 centuries after that. The point is that because longitude was worked out by Britain, because the 0 degrees of longitude goes through Greenwich in this city is literally, and even today, somewhat figuratively, the centre of the world. And if London is the centre of the world, Buckingham Palace is its heart. The flag is up, the king is in residence, and of course we have that fantastic thing overlooking it. Give me a minute. Okay, so I'm standing in the shadow, as it were, of the Queen Victoria Memorial. Queen Victoria, of course, died in 1901 after the second longest reign of any British monarch. But Buckingham Palace is called Buckingham Palace because it was built here at exactly the same time as the Longitude Bill was passed in 1703 for John Sheffield, the Duke of Buckingham. If any of you are of a classical tilt, that is the same Duke of Buckingham on Alexandre Dumas' Musketeers novels. The Duke of Buckingham. Anyway, John Sheffield, a very powerful man. He had what amounted to a townhouse built here in 1703 to 1714. A little later on, because he died and his son unfortunately kind of wrecked things, and the Duchy of Buckingham died with him, really. But time passed on, and George III bought, with proceeds from selling the Brighton Pavilion, bought Buckingham Palace from the Sheffields in the early 1800s. It was then added to, of course. What we see here was built much later. The original building behind, so Buckingham Palace is kind of like an open square with buildings sticking out the back, and then the largest private gardens in London behind that. What we see here was really built during the time of Queen Victoria, Prince Albert and Edward VII. And the very famous balcony that everyone in the entire world has seen on video or in photograph was built really in the very late 1800s. Anyway, so George III built, So George III bought Buckingham, what would become Buckingham Palace, for his wife, Queen Charlotte. When Queen Victoria acceded the throne in the 1830s, that was when Buckingham Palace became the primary residence of the monarch. Of course, you have Windsor Castle, Sandringham, Clarence House, there are so many, but this became the primary residence, and that remains to this day. When Prince Albert hooked up, with the Queen, he undertook, as the Prince Consort, and he saw it as part of his duty, to seriously upgrade everything, build and renovate and decorate and bring into style. He imported luxury furnishings. He expanded the King's collection so much. But when he died, Queen Victoria, who of course wore black mourning dress the rest of her life, she never lived here again. She lived in the castle. She lived in Clarence House, and it fell into what's rumoured to be quite serious disrepair. When Queen Victoria died in 1901, her son Edward VII acceded the throne. That's the Queen's grandfather. And he and his wife were serious socialites. Massive party scene, the Marlborough set they were called, they and their friends socializing all over the place. I think he took it upon himself to do that because his mother, heartbroken for 60 years of her life, had just withdrawn from the public so much. And then this part with the famous balcony was added on pretty much last in the very, very late in the early 20th century. The importance, because everyone knows what it is, everyone recognizes it, everyone recognizes the balcony, because so many things have occurred here. From, announcing the death of Edward VII and the accession of David, his son, and then his abdication, and then the Queen's father, George, acceding the throne, and of course the end of World War II. And by very popular, it was legend, and then they confirmed it, this whole place was a massive party at the end of World War II. All of the royal family celebrating with their people, standing on the balcony, and Her Majesty the Queen, when she was Princess Elizabeth, and her sister Princess Margaret, in full military garb, left the palace and came to party with the people and stayed out all night dancing. There was a guy, and he swore blind to his friends that he had danced with the princess. He said to her, apparently, "I know who you are," he whispered in her ear. And he swore blind to his friends that he had done that. They didn't believe him. And then, of course, a memoir or two came out and it was confirmed. I very much doubt he ever bought a drink again. Anyway, so a brief history, if you will, of Buckingham Palace, beautiful as it is. It's very wet. I'm going to try, probably in vain, to find a dry place to have. I've got a flask of whiskey, of course I do. I'm Jeff, and a cigar. I'm going to walk through Green Park that way and head towards Piccadilly. Right, walking across Green Park, Palace behind me, heading in a northeasterly direction, and then I'm going straight east to Piccadilly Circus. Anyway, just to pass the time really, for those of you who don't know me personally, a shout out to my man Gunter. I was born in London, as I mentioned, as were my sister and our father before us. My mother was born in Edinburgh, but I was born in St Pancras Hospital, which, as locals will remember, is next door to King's Cross Station, gateway to the north. We lived here until I was 4, my sister was 2, and then we packed up and moved to the south coast. My dad is still a Londoner, really, even though he left 50 years ago. And it is a lovely, lovely town, especially at Christmas, even in the rain. Yeah. Right. Strolling along Piccadilly, this is the Wolsey, just across the road from the Ritz. Possibly the best restaurant in London. It's an old car showroom, which means it's an incredible sense of space. The chefs are amazing, and my dad loves the steak tartare, and the last time my mother dined there, Keira Knightley was sitting behind her. So, if you're in the mood, a fantastic place to eat. Anyway, strolling along Piccadilly now, with a great deal of people, obviously. So a brief word for those unfamiliar with London. Of course, London is famous for double-decker buses, red double-decker buses. I have absolutely no idea why the rest of the world has not adopted double-decker buses. It freaks me out. But the ones that we see coming up, if this one for Hammersmith ever leaves, they were looking for a new design after the old Bristols and the rather drab ones being phased out. And they had a competition, a design competition, and I can't remember his name, but they won, and the new designs are really, really cool. Classic, yet modern.